A recent statistical job that I've actually reported to you on before by what are the two really leading global specialists on the inequality of wealth and income in the United States. Two economists, one named Saez and the other one named Piketty. Piketty is a professor in Paris, in France, and Saez is a professor at University of California in Berkeley. And they collaborate. They have a website you can go to where you get all the latest statistics of their ongoing research. And they've done a research recently that has led to a number of people doing calculations. And the one I want to talk to you about, and I'll give you the citation, because if some of you are interested, you can follow this up yourself. The work was done by a person named Colin Gordon, Gordon. And if you look up the Economic Policy Institute in Washington, EPI.org, you can get his work, and you can see there all the statistics that go into it. I'm just going to give you the results. And here's what they did. They looked at the growth in income of Americans at all different levels of income over the whole period from 1979 to 2012. Adjusting it for prices, so this is the growth in what you can really afford to buy with your income. And they asked first, how did the lowest 20% of Americans do? The lowest 20% of households, families, how did they do when you looked at how much they earned, adjusted for the prices they had to pay? How'd they do? And over the years, from 1979, over 30 years, really the last 30 years of our country's, their income dropped by 12.1%. The real value of the bottom 20%, they really took it hard. They lost. What about the next 20%? The people who are not the 20% poorest, but are in the next range. They're wealthier than the bottom 20%, but not wealthier than the 40 from the count up. They didn't do badly. They kind of stayed the same. They dropped a tiny bit. So now we got 40% of the people who either dropped or stayed the same. The next quintile, the next fifth of our population, those who are literally in the middle of the distribution, the 40 to 60%, these are the people who earn more than the bottom 40%, but less than the top 40%. They're right in the middle. They increased by 8.4%. You know, over 35 years, this isn't spectacular, to say the least. And I'm going to come back, and you're going to see it's a lot worse than not spectacular. But now, that's sort of the bad news, right? It really means that the bottom 60% averaged loss. When you average all three of these together, it's a loss. The majority of people over the last 30-some years actually lost the income in terms of what they could afford to buy with it. It's a lost generation for them. Not only no growth, but they lost. But now the good news. Yeah, I'm bringing you good news. Here comes the good news. Stay with me. The people who are richer than the bottom 60%, but not as rich as the top 20%, this group, they did pretty well. Right? 20% increase. It's not 1% a year. It's less than that, but it's something. It's not much, but something. And now we get to the top 20%. Hey, they improved 48%. I mean, half again as much in 2012 they could afford with their income than they could back in 1970 again. Not half again is up almost 50%. But now we get to the top 5%. Whoa, they more than doubled their income. And then we get to the top 1%. They almost tripled their income. And then we get to the top 0.1%. Their income went up 4 times. And then the winner, the group you all are, those particularly that are young and here as students at the new school, you're here in order to get that degree which you hope will catapult you into this group. And you know why you want to be here, because, wow, their income rose 7 times. over the same period. The top 1/100th% saw their income go up 7 times, while the bottom 20% dropped 12%. This is, to use a simple term, a stupefying inequality. There really is no other way to describe this. This is about as far from an equal improvement over the last 30 years as you could get. It basically says the poorer you are, the worse this system screws you. And the richer you are, the more rich you will become. Or, as it says in the good book, to them that have shall be given, and from them who have not, even from them something will be taken. That's a paraphrase, but you get the idea. Okay? Now let me tell you what these numbers tell you that's even more astonishing. Over this period, American households changed dramatically. The single most important change was the addition of a second adult to the income-earning part of the family. This is the period when adult women, by the millions, moved into the paid labor force. They weren't there then, and they are there now. Which means that when you measure what happened to each group, you got to remember to take into account that there were more people, typically double the number of people working. Namely, the wife had joined the husband to work. If you think about it that way, that these are households that were twice as busy working as before, then these numbers are worse than you could imagine, because it means that the majority of people didn't do very well, even though the spouse was now working a part-time or full-time job. When you take that into account, this is a very sad number. And it explains a great deal about American politics. Because the majority of people, no matter how they are affected by the media, no matter how much wishful thinking they engage in, no matter how much they console one another, and we all do that, there's a relentless experience over the last 35 years. You're not getting anywhere economically. You can't make it. You're sinking into debt. You're having to forego things. You're having to diddle around with your income tax to avoid you're having to do more and more things that somewhere you wish you did not have to. And you're angry, and you're upset, and you're looking for explanations for why this is happening to you, why you're living in a society so staggeringly different. The rich got unspeakably richer. These numbers are more extreme than in almost, or maybe even every country on earth. I don't know, I haven't done the comparison, but I can assure you we are way at one end of the story in this level of inequality. And it also means, politically, something very simple, and yet missed so often. What do you think happens in a society where the top 5%, let's use that one, 5%, everybody in the top 5% either doubles their income over these 35 years or much more than that? Clearly, this top 5% is becoming more and more aware, whatever they tell themselves, that they're rich in comparison with everybody else. Now, there's a problem in a society like ours if a tiny number of people become so staggeringly rich relative to everybody else. And that problem is our voting system, our political system. The voting system says everybody gets a vote. One person, one vote. At least, sort of. That's how it works. So there's going to be a temptation. You don't need an advanced course in political science, something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy anyway, but you don't need it, to understand that if these people aren't stupid, they're going to understand they have a political problem coming. because they're going to understand that for the mass of people, it's going to somehow percolate into their brains. You know something? The 95% who aren't doing well, we are the vast majority of the voters. Which means if we vote together, we could use the political system to undo the effects of the economic system. That's what it means if you give everybody a vote, which is why through history people who are wealthy have tried to prevent all that. Okay? So these folks at the top, they understood that it's the dialectic we used to call it, the very success they have in the economy vulnerabilizes them politically. And they got to do something about that. And what do? You try to use your wealth to negate the political risk of a voting system. And the way you do that is to control the political party, the political candidate, the whole procedure by making an election a matter of money, which is your relative strength, rather than anything else, which is the other side's relative strength, numbers. So if you're wondering, why is it that politics has become such a moneyed activity? This has nothing to do with greed, human nature, any of the other crap. This is a result of this. The only way those folks are going to hold on to an inequality of this sort is if they neutralize the danger from politics. They have to render politics something that the mass of people are, this is going to suggest something to you, they have to render politics something the mass of people can't get at because they don't have the money. They have to render politics something people are disgusted by, revolted by, throw up their hands and say these are all a bunch of whatever is necessary not to enable the mass of people to use their numbers to neutralize this outcome. Every time you say, which I understand of course, those clowns in Washington, you're doing what's hoped for. Look at them as clowns, look at them as idiots, look at them as crooks. It really doesn't matter. Don't take it seriously, turn away from it. Do not engage this at the same time that you complain that you have no power. You actually don't exploit the power you have. And I'm not making an argument for electoral politics. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not. But you do have to understand they are worried about your acting politically, even if you're not interested in it. They're worried you might. And they therefore have to neutralize the political system. You may think it's very dangerous to be deadlocked in what? Not for them. Fine. Nothing happens. Nothing is a lot better than what might happen. So they'll go with nothing. That's a product of this arrangement. And so far, it's working real well.